Good afternoon. Thanks for joining our July webinar. Today, we'll be talking about water, a very timely topic. It's hot out there. Water is a finite resource. It is not renewable. And saving 20% water in your building is very attainable. And this title of the webinar is something that's really stuck with me. It's something a friend of mine pointed out, that we're using drinking water to flush our toilets, to shower, to cool our buildings. Drinking water should be for drinking. So let's be smart about how we're using water for all the things we need to use it for, so we preserve that resource for the future. I want to thank our sponsor, LA Department of Water and Power, as always, for supporting this educational content and our program. A few housekeeping items. As usual, we will be distributing the slides and a recording with it by Friday, along with some recaps, key takeaways of things that we will be talking about today to underline those. We'll keep the lines muted to keep things orderly, but there will be time for questions at the end via the chat box. Please feel free to submit your questions at any point during the presentation, and we'll get to them at the end. And then we'd love to hear how we did. So we'll have a link up. You can shoot an email. Feedback is always welcome at the end. My name is Dave Hodgins. I run the LA Better Buildings Challenge. Doing most of the talking today will be my colleague Mo Besnick, who is our in-house water expert. Our learning objectives really are to understand what's happening at the state and local level on the legislative front that could impact your property, how code is evolving, local ordinances and state laws, then some questions to ask to help chart out the right strategy for your facility based on your operations, your objectives, the tenants that you have, etc. Do I fix? Do I replace? Do I augment? The questions that will help you chart the right course for you. And then some little more of a deep dive. We're not going to go super technical today, but some examples of the types of opportunities that are out there, some case studies that show the types of benefits that can be realized through these types of projects. So really the goal is to come away with some context, some questions to think about, to figure out the right course of action for your specific scenario, and then what are some options. So hope you enjoy the presentation. With that, I'd like to hand it over to my colleague Mo.
Thanks, Dave. So current reality. I know we all just experienced an extremely wet year after a pretty wet year, but that's not the true reality. The true reality is that California and Los Angeles, a semi-arid desert, will continually face droughts and water shortages. Droughts are cyclical and they're gaining intensity due to climate change. Just look at the last 2 decades kind of mapped out on this chart. We've had 3 droughts, with the last drought from 2011 to 16 being the worst in recorded history. We've had a wet year, but next year could be a dry year, and it's a cycle. We have to be prepared and manage our resources better. The current reality is that state legislation is tightening and demanding measures be taken. So responding to this reality of the ongoing drought and water shortages, last year the state passed landmark legislation setting standards for water use. Details for the new laws will be finalized over the next few years, but in general, the framework requires water utilities to meet specific use standards. Outdoor irrigation will be based upon a landscape water budget, which will factor in the amount of landscape area and the local climate, and indoor residential will be set at 55 gallons per day. For commercial mixed-use meters, there's a lot of debate on what the standard should be, since there are no industry-accepted benchmarks and much variables at any given site. But more than likely, it's going to be a % reduction, mandated. In addition, there's Senate Bill 407, which requires that all buildings, residential, commercial, multifamily, built before 1994, bring all their plumbing fixtures up to current code. For commercial buildings, this was required as of January 1st of 2019. That means you must have 1.28 gallons per flush toilets, 1 pint urinals, and 0.5 gallon per minute public restroom faucets. Another current reality is that the City of LA has implemented the existing buildings energy and water efficiency ordinance. In 2016, the city adopted the ordinance requiring that buildings over 20,000 square feet or more disclose their building's energy and water consumption using EPA's Energy Star Portfolio Manager for benchmarking. The ordinance has three components. One, annually report your building's energy and water use and receive a benchmarking score. And if you receive a 75 and are Energy Star certified, you pass for energy. For water, there's only a score for multifamily, and therefore you'll either have to conduct audits and retrocommissioning or tuning up the building's potable water use systems, or reduce use by 22% over a 5-year cycle. And building and safety will disclose each building's performance. The desired reality, and why most of you are here today, is to have an efficient, water efficient property, and at minimum reduce your use by 22% over 5 years. To maximize all available incentives, comply with all laws, and in the end, reduce your utility costs, increase your bottom line, show your commitment to sustainability, and thereby get higher rents. The point is, water conservation will be mandated, and it makes good sense to do it now. So how do you get there? Well, first assess your building and its water use. Then review potential measures, specifically the ones we'll discuss today, and know what resources are available to you to assist you in evaluating and implementing projects. Understanding if your building is efficient is an important first step. If your building is using more than the median water use intensity or gallons per square foot per year as seen in the chart, you have an opportunity to assess for water savings. These figures here on this chart are from the CVEX national study done in 2012, and although not absolute, are a good guide. An example, if you're an office building using more than 12.5 gallons per square foot per year, you should take a look at your use and ways to reduce it. So what are the top water uses? For most properties, water use will fall into three categories. Plumbing, or bathrooms and kitchen really, at 50%, cooling at approximately 28%, and landscape, if you have irrigated area, 22%. Use is going to vary from site to site, but unless you have a highly specialized activity at your site, the top uses will fall into these same categories. And as you can imagine, matching these uses to the top water savings measures turn out to be cooling tower water treatment upgrades, installing high efficiency plumbing fixtures, and upgrading your irrigation systems. And if you're one of the lucky ones, on-site use of groundwater. For any site with a cooling tower, this will be your number one opportunity. It can account for 40% of the property's water use. And as you're looking at your system and what potential upgrades, you'll need to ask yourself several things. What's the size and load of your system? Will you be using your existing water treatment vendor or getting new bids? Are you looking to eliminate all chemicals? Where is the tower located, and are there accessibility issues? Is there spacing for new equipment? You'll also need to understand the local water quality at the site and available staffing or vendor manpower in order to make an informed decision. The first step will be to meet with your chief engineer or facility manager, request water treatment reports from your vendor so you can look at what the local water quality is and the current cycles of concentration. If possible, install sub-meters and makeup and blowdown lines and determine what the actual cycles of concentration are. Most likely there will be opportunities to increase the cycles, so you'll need to work with your water treatment vendors to evaluate potential upgrades.
Mo, what is a good rule of thumb for what's considered, quote, good in terms of cycles of concentration on a cooling tower?
Most people would say 6 or more, but it's really going to be dependent upon the local water quality at the site. In any given year, that changes depending upon where the water is coming from. So if the water is coming from the Colorado River and is high in minerals, it's likely you won't get 6 cycles. But as of right now in Los Angeles, with a lot of water coming from the Sierras, the cycles can be increased even more than 6 at many sites.
So with the variability of LA's water quality, it sounds like that's important to plan for when you're looking at different treatment options, to have some flexibility to modulate as the water quality changes.
It's really critical. It's really critical to monitor it on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, but it's also critical when looking at what your options are for upgrades, which we can talk about now. A simple upgrade, there are several, going from really low cost to the more expensive and complex options, but starting with just the installation of a conductivity controller. Most towers have one, but many aren't using them as a water management tool, rather just to inject chemicals. But you can use it to better manage the system and monitor the cycles of concentration, and you input what the local quality is and what your max cycles can be. This is really a solution best for sites without on-site staff and smaller systems. And LADWP gives rebates of $625 for the controller, which should cover the cost, and you'd see an immediate payback. Another option in the next slide is, and probably the easiest upgrade with the best return, is acid treatment, such as sulfuric or hydrochloric, which you can even further increase cycles. With the conductivity control, depending upon local water quality, you could probably get to 3 or 4. With acid, maybe 4 to 6. However, acid, as we know, is a hazardous material and requires special handling. And if you're cooling towers on your roof and the access is a bit precarious, it may not be a solution for your site. DWP does offer rebates of $3,000, which again should cover the full cost and will have an excellent return. Another cooling out tower option is water softening to remove the hardness before the water enters the tower, which even allows you to even go higher cycles, 6 to 8 cycles. It's a more expensive option and better suited for larger towers, but it's commonly available from most water treatment service providers and should provide significant savings. It does require space on the site, along with resources to monitor the system and add salt. For this one, because of the larger savings, LADWP offers custom incentives of $1.75 per 1,000 gallons for the first 4 years of the project's implementation.
And if you could throw out a number, I'm putting you on the spot, a rule of thumb for roughly what percentage of a project cost that can work out to over that 4-year period?
It's really going to depend upon the size of your tower, but probably 50%.
Awesome.
So there are also non-precipitation and electrochemical systems that don't use chemicals at all, and where you can really ramp up your cycles to 25 to 50 cycles. But these systems can be costly. They require added resources to monitor the system and at times added filtration, but they can help your site meet other goals such as eliminating chemicals. And again, the same incentives of $1.75 per 1,000 gallons are offered. Recently, the City of LA implemented an electrochemical solution, Dynamic Water Technologies, which is an electrolysis process that promotes scaling of the hard minerals into reactors instead of into the tower and the heat exchanger tubes. The city was already on acid when they implemented the system and operating somewhat efficiently, but with the installation of DWT, they were able to reduce their water use by 20%, and reduce maintenance and water costs annually by $38,000, which was roughly a 4-year payback. And now the city plans on deploying this in several other facilities. And if you're interested in it, we have a case study about this project, as well as that City Hall is conducting monthly tours of the installation. And you can email us if you're interested in attending a tour. Another interesting cooling tower case study, and one that was recently awarded LABBC's Innovation Award, is the County of LA. They implemented a performance-based bid for water treatment. So with dozens of buildings and different sizes, loads, and literally 33 buildings, 4 different departments, the county was really struggling with how to meet their efficiency goals and while keeping their costs down. So they generated an RFP that included performance requirements for water savings, water safety, and asset protection. They spent a ton of time upfront developing formulas for the bidders to complete for each tower. The bidder had to propose their chosen new water treatment technology and the expected cycles of concentration. The calculation then spit out the cost of running the system, which included chemicals, water, and sewer costs. And so then they were able to fairly evaluate each site and identify what the best technology was. The contract was awarded to Nalco, and they've seen over 60 million gallons in annual savings. And if you're interested in learning more about this project or getting a copy of the RFP, you can email us as well.
Yeah, I was really impressed with this approach of setting a target, a performance target, and letting the vendors come forward with solutions to meet that. I mean, huge numbers.
Huge. So plumbing, I feel like we've been talking about toilets and plumbing for years, and literally we have, but there's still a huge opportunity. It's the top water use at all properties and should be always considered for upgrades. But again, there's lots of questions you need to ask yourself when considering implementation, like what's the age of your building? When was your last plumbing fixture upgrade? Are restrooms public or private tenant use? Which ones are considered high use and would have the highest payback? Do you have a renovation scheduled in the near future? Are there any recent problems that you're having and ongoing leaks? And do you have a plan for managing bathroom closures? Will there be any tenant issues? All of these need to be considered. And if your building was built after 2009, or if you've recently done fixture upgrades, your most effective option will probably be just to do tune-ups, such as checking for and fixing all leaks. But if your building was built before 2009 and you haven't upgraded your fixtures, it's probably your best option is to replace the plumbing fixtures, which starts with just talking to your chief engineer, inspecting each fixture, identifying the current flush volume, any construction considerations such as floor versus wall-mounted fixtures, and just the total device counts in order to get a quote. Toilets have come a long way in the last few years. For tank-type toilets, they have best-in-market toilets that flush as low as 0.8 gallons per flush. For valve-type toilets, it goes as low as 1.1 gallons per flush. However, for commercial buildings with valve-type toilets, special consideration should be given whether deciding to move forward with the best-in-market technologies. The design of commercial buildings and the fact that there's limited augmented wastewater from showers, baths, washers means that the lowest flow may not perform well. So we strongly recommend that you pilot test any technology before initiating a full implementation. DWP offers $200 for fixture for toilet replacements through the SoCal Water Smart program. And for tank type toilets, this should cover the entire cost and have an immediate payback. There are vendors that will do installations for $250. For valve type, the return is probably more like 1 to 3 years. And these are industry averages and obviously may differ depending upon your site conditions. The LABBC has primers regarding these with performance reviews and ratings of the toilets, as well as links to EPA's WaterSense certified models, which are required for the rebate, which we'll send out as part of the presentation. For urinals, there are 3 prominent predominant types of urinals available in the market: 1 pint, zero water, or hybrid, which flush 1 gallon every 72 hours to address calcium buildup in the pipes. LABDWP offers $500 for any fixture using 1 pint or less. And with this substantial incentive, paybacks immediate to 3 years. And again, there are EPA WaterSense certified fixtures available for rebates. Faucets can go as low as 0.5 gallons per minute in public restrooms and 1.0 in residential applications, and shower heads as low as 1.2 gallons per minute. DWP offers 2 programs for customers. Commercial buildings can receive free product from DWP, and if you're a multifamily site, you can get free installation of aerators and shower heads through the Direct Therm program with the gas company. And information on these programs will be available in the links to the primers as well. Here's an example of a straightforward but highly profitable retrofit. Avalon Bay recently upgraded their Toluca Hills apartments to premium efficiency toilets. They received $373,000 in rebates from DWP and saw an immediate payback, as well as $75,000 in annual utility savings.
And 5.1 million gallons of water saved. This is fantastic.
E&S Ring did the same at 3 of their apartments. It cost them $212,000. They got $212,000 in rebates and are now saving $112,000 a year. This just makes good business sense. Now on to irrigation. If you have irrigated landscape at your property, before you move forward with any project, you really need to assess your site, your company, and consider several factors when making the decision, whether or not you want to remove part or all of your lawn, whether or not you just want to upgrade your irrigation. You need to understand how your space is being currently used. Do you need an area for recreation? What areas do most people see first? What's the condition of the landscape and the irrigation system? How long ago was it installed? Is it ready for a revamp? What's the image you're trying to portray to tenants and residents? Do you want a traditional landscape or a more unique custom area? Are you looking to use less chemicals, pesticides, fertilizers? Once you have your idea of the desired landscape, then you'll need to meet with your landscape contractor and discuss options. But no matter what path you choose, LADWP has incentives. If you choose to replace all or part of your lawn, LADWP offers $3 per square foot, up to 50,000 square foot of turf replaced, and $1 for 50,000 and 1 to 7 acres. Almost all sites that have irrigation will benefit from some sort of smart irrigation and should be considered when choosing an upgrade. Listed here are some of the best practices which can reduce use up to 35%. We have smart cloud-based controllers that set and change the watering schedule based upon local conditions and weather, high efficiency sprinkler nozzles with reduced flow but improved technology that water in bigger drops and provide more uniformity, pressure regulating spray heads that regulate pressure and eliminate waste and low head drainage, and master valves and flow sensors that track flow and usage, and if anomalies are detected will automatically shut off the system, and drip or point source irrigation. Most of these also will protect your property from damage and overspray from overspray and leaks. But before you consider any of these newest technologies, first, your maintenance staff or contractors should evaluate your system and make repairs as necessary. There's no need to move to the best technology if your system has broken, below grade, or mismatched heads. LADWP offers incentives for smart controllers of $50 per station and sprinkler nozzles of $6 per nozzle, should cover the entire cost of the product. And although groundwater use may not be available to all folks on the call today, groundwater or dewatering can be a great opportunity to offset demand at your site. So just some background, groundwater can be a nuisance in areas with high water tables because it can infiltrate and compromise the building's infrastructure, the parking and below ground buildings. The conventional remedy is to simply dump this water into the storm drain or sewer system, and this process is called dewatering. There are numerous areas in LA with high groundwater tables, including mid-city areas from north near West Hollywood down to Fairfax, Beverly Grove, Century City, Westwood, West LA, as well as additional smaller areas throughout the city. If you do have groundwater, you'll need to determine your groundwater basin, measure the discharge amount, because if you're discharging water of about 10,000 gallons or more per day, you may have an opportunity for reuse. You'll need to test the water quality of the groundwater to understand the treatment options and determine the potential end uses, including cooling, irrigation, and potentially sanitation, and then evaluate your treatment options. The treatment will all be dependent on the chemistry of your groundwater, the end use, your water savings goals, and your ROI thresholds. LABBC has a roadmap, which we'll provide a link to as well, that outlines this process as well as additional details. You can go on the next slide. An example of a super successful dewatering project is Cedars Sinai Hospital. A couple years back, Cedars took a look at really an innovative project at the time, one of the first. They literally had a river running underneath the building and were dumping it into the storm drain. They now capture the water, treat it with reverse osmosis, and use it for their cooling, saving over 28 million gallons per year. I think they're over 30 now. And they received $343,000 from LADWP and Metropolitan Water District, more than likely to get more as they increase capacity. Not all projects are as large as Cedars or require advanced water treatment like Cedars. Century Plaza Towers in Century City took the groundwater, piped it to a cistern, and started using it for irrigation, saving nearly 3 million gallons per year, and allowed them to keep their functional turf grass. And these are just some examples of some really great projects that we have. I'll now turn it over to Dave so he can discuss how LABBC can help you assess and implement similar projects.
Thanks, Mo. That was a great overview. And though it does feel like we've been talking about some of these things for a long time, it's increasingly important, as you showed with the ongoing droughts, and just because we had one wet year, you could conclude that next year probably won't be that way. So we're here to help. We're here as a free resource. Mo, who's been doing most of the talking today, is our in-house expert, and she is available to help talk through these questions. And we do have available materials that restate some of those questions that she was talking through, but we're here as a resource. A lot of you are already doing great things, and so one of the things that's important to do is case studies. As we were showing today, we have the annual Innovation Awards. We're taking nominations now for projects that are completing this year. That event's coming up April 1st in 2020, as well as speaking opportunities for those of you who want to talk about the importance of water conservation, energy conservation, efficiency for your organizations, what you've done, what's worked, what's been challenging. Those are the opportunities that we also offer. That crosses over into the peer exchange, webinars, and events, working with industry partners to help spread good ideas worth spreading. We'll crib from Ted. And advisory services, complementary, customized to your situation. As I mentioned, Mo is available. We have 3 other technical advisors on staff who focus more on energy, and we help to connect the dots, help answer questions that can get you on the trajectory you're trying to get to. And that could include supporting the development of a business case internally within the organization. We know how difficult that is and have a lot of experience navigating different organizations supporting that, as well as interfacing directly with the utilities. We can't jump the line, of course, or bend rules, but we can make sure that everybody's clear on processes, documentation, data, timelines, et cetera, so that things can go as quickly as possible and money doesn't get left on the table. Because the utilities are very serious about deploying the budgets that they have into projects, but they need to see certain things in order to be able to do that. So that's one of the big things that we do, and a lot of the projects that Mo highlighted today, she was directly involved in to make sure that that happened. So we'll wrap up with just a preview of some upcoming events. Our Building Technology Showcase is coming up in, gosh, just about 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, on August 9th. It's going to be a great day, or afternoon rather, with tacos and a deep dive on data with 3 of our partners, Paramount Studios, Hudson Pacific Properties, and the City of LA, talking about the ways they've gone about first getting a handle on data, how and where are they using energy and water in their facilities, then what did they do with that information and what has that enabled. We'll also have a rebate speed date where you'll have a chance to meet directly with utility program staff. Scheduling can be a challenge, so if you have projects on your mind or things that are already in process and want to make sure that all the ducks are in a row, it's a great opportunity to come meet face to face and put a person on the other end of the email. So encourage folks to attend that. It's going to be great. And then next month we'll be talking about reframing this concept of return on investment, because there are so many other non-financial benefits that arise through these efficiency projects, whether that's energy or water. And that can include things like tenant comfort, risk mitigation, thinking about resiliency, the list goes on, and all of those things have value. So thinking a little bit more out of the box about how you look at these things, and some organizations that are doing that and seeing great results. And then I mentioned already innovation awards. If you've got projects that you want to see highlighted, feel free to reach out to us. As I said, we're taking nominations now. So before we go to questions, just concluding with a little quote from East of Eden, which I have not read. It's way too long, but easy to find quotes. So it never failed that during the dry years, the people forgot about the rich years. During the wet years, they lost all memory of the dry years, and it was always that way. Something that I've heard the mayor pick up on in some speeches that he's given recently about this important topic. So with that, I see questions starting to come in, and anyone, please feel free to type those in as we go. So first question, how do I know if I have groundwater on site that I can use? So going back to, I think, the groundwater reuse opportunity.
So you would have a permit either with the regional board or with LA Sanitation, and you would be paying permit fees based upon that. So that would be a way to find out. We can assist you too in kind of looking at the areas, but if you're in some of those high water table areas, more than likely you do have some kind. The question will be, do you either have enough groundwater to offset demand or enough demand to use the groundwater?
Great, and that is the kind of thing that we'd love to get into on a more property-specific basis. So please do reach out to us if you think that there could be an opportunity there. And not every site has end uses that match very well with groundwater flows. We've looked at several projects that don't work, but a lot that do. So please do contact us, and we'd be happy to help think through some of those questions. Great question, and I'm not sure that we'll have the figures in front of us to answer this right now, but it's a great topic. Is the energy and water nexus and building decarbonization is a term that's making its way into the conversation, which is great. And so the question is, how can the avoided costs and emissions from reducing water use be sort of included in this question of decarbonization, carbon accounting. We had a webinar a few months back with Katie Micah from the mayor's office, who talked about the greenhouse gas intensity of California's water supply. And as Mo was talking about, we do get water from all over the place, most of it pumped, hundreds and hundreds of miles from Northern California. So there is a profile for GHG emissions related to each water source. And so how that evolves over time depends on things like snowpack, as Mo was saying, as it impacts our local water quality. So super important question. I think something that more and more people are paying attention to. New York just passed their building decarbonization law. My crystal ball would say I wouldn't be surprised to see something similar in California or even locally. So it's a great point. There was another question just to clarify about the turf removal rebate, and we can follow up. But Mo, do you know offhand, is that $2 per square foot or $3?
Well, Metropolitan gives 2 and LADWP adds 1, so it's a total of 3 if you're in the LADWP service territory.
Thanks for clarifying that, and that is a similar dynamic for a lot of the water incentives work a little bit differently than the energy incentives or electricity incentives specifically, because Met and DWP will partner on these things, and so it is a question that comes up. So want to make sure most of that is automatic, I believe, but just the sources can be partially from one entity and partially from the other. So it's a good question. Just a point that some of these programs do sunset, at various points as code continues to get more stringent. There's a conversation about, well, do we need to incentivize things that are becoming mandatory? And so I think the takeaway from this question or comment rather is that time is of the essence when it comes to incentives, especially for things like toilets specifically. If you've got an opportunity there, if you think you have an opportunity there, best to move quickly while that is still incentivized, because code is moving forward. I think we actually had a question about code. Where can I find documentation on the current plumbing code and SB 407 requirements?
Well, we have a lot of the code information is in our primers as well. We have documentation on both what the state and local plumbing code is that we can provide you. We'll send it out as a presentation, yeah.
Great, and that is also relevant for the existing buildings efficiency ordinance that Mo alluded to. On the water side, because there is no benchmark score the way that there is on energy, except for multifamily, there is a provision in the ordinance that says if you meet the code that was, the most recent code that was in force during the relevant time period, you're good. And so understanding what that is a really good place to start, because that's the cutoff. Once you've done that, no further action necessary, kind of equivalent to getting Energy Star certified on the energy side. So happy to provide that information for anyone who would like to see it, and it's definitely a good place to start. See how close am I to the metrics? For example, 6 cycles of concentration in your cooling towers. I'm getting 4. What could I do to up my cycles to get up to that 6 and try to meet that exemption? A lot of great questions. Mo, you mentioned the tours at City Hall East to see the dynamic water installation.
Yes.
How can people get more information about that? Just contact us, right?
Yeah, contact us, email us, and we'll coordinate with Dynamic Water and the city folks to get them scheduled.
Cool. Yeah, and it's been great to see the interest. I think that folks have had, from what I've heard, kind of different reasons for being interested, but some of the high-rise office managers who have gone have been concerned about hauling chemicals or even salt. You know, it's not hazardous material, but it's heavy all the way up to the roof. You know, lead points, things like that can also be reasons to look at non-chemical options like that. And great to see it in person. Excellent. Did we have any other questions coming in? Wonderful. Well, thank you, Mo, for the presentation. I think we can save a few minutes here. And thank you, everybody, for attending. And we hope you'll look out for the recap by Friday and tune in next month for our conversation about reframing returns on investment and how that can open up possibilities for deeper investment in efficiencies in your properties. So thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.